Heroes for hire, streets in desire, fist and cage, bringing that fire. Golden fist to glow, Dragon G flow, color master roll, falling like dominoes. Martial arts swift, can't even catch a breath. Danny Rand coming, better brace for the test. Solid as the night, strike quicker than a flash. In the shadows lurk, opponents turn to ash. Wealth ain't nothing, with this power I yield. Iron fist reign, every battle I seal. Step aside, Lil Danny, steel skin ready. Harlem's own kingpin, hold it down steady. Bulletproof swagger, bad guys shatter. Luke Cage power, making villains scatter. Street level hero, roots running deep. Heroes for hire, my word I keep. Fists like boulders, crushing all foes. Power man here, everybody knows. Heroes for hire, justice they inspire. Cage and fist, take them higher. Street saviors, no capes required. Taking out crooks, leaving them retired.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. 90s comics, that's what we're here to talk about. And I hope you are here to listen about them too, because if not, it's the wrong podcast. Evan Bevins is right over there. What's up, Evan? You ready to talk some 90s comics?
Always.
All right. Chris Armstrong, he's going to let you know about the poll that we dropped, and then I will give the results. But we got to figure out what was going on in his head.
Okay, so the poll was between Heroes for Hire #1 from 97 and Alpha Flight #1, which I think was the second Alpha Flight series, and that was also, I believe, from 97.
So your post for the poll says, in the wake of Onslaught, the Marvel U needed some heroes to pick up the slack after losing the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. Alpha Flight and the Heroes for Hire stepped up. Which of these #1 issues should we discuss on an upcoming episode? And I'm going to do something I haven't done here in a while, and that is read the comments. Because I don't do that as often as I should, and I really feel bad because our listeners out there are great, and I love to see them interact, especially with the people from the Unspoken decade. They're sometimes pretty vocal. Sometimes they have opinions. So let's take a look here before I get into the results.
On the internet?
Trust me, Evan, it happens. All right? It happens. All right. So Nate Jones, we know this guy. One Dean Compton says, I remember people saying this Alpha Flight was great, but I've never gotten around to reading it. Well, we're not going to be. Oh, nope. I'm giving away the answer or giving away the winner. Nope. Not going to say anything. Chris Armstrong, you chimed in with it was the first Alpha Flight I read, and I dug it back then. Evan says, oh no, America lost 2 super teams. We'll just keep on protecting Canada on our own, like always. Is that an Alpha Flight joke?
I mean, it is what it is. America's got like 47 super teams, and okay, 2 of them disappeared, and Alpha Flight's like, yeah, we're just gonna, Great Beast, Master of the World, stuff like that. Yeah, we'll hold the fort down up north.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At least Squirrel Girl helped him during the War of the Realms.
Well, Corey Lewis chimed in and he says that was the issue that got me hooked on Alpha Flight. So those are our comments on the poll there. And I mean, my understanding is I both of these books flew under the radar for me in 97, not Age of Apocalypse. I was hooked on Onslaught. I read that clean through. I was collecting X titles at the time. And I guess it was prime time to kind of throw in, hey, it's a new book. It's a new team, guys. Catch up with what's going on over with other teams that aren't the Avengers, which aren't the Fantastic Four. So granted, though, Heroes Reborn's coming out. Everybody's going to be reading about the Fantastic Four and the Avengers when Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld are on those books. But aside from that, the poll results, according to what I see here, second place goes to Alpha Flight #1. And this wasn't a runaway. When you add the totals up from Twitter and Facebook, Alpha Flight came in with 29 votes, while Heroes for Hire comes in with 33. So Heroes for Hire is the winner here, and that's the book we're going to be talking about tonight. Do you remember much about Alpha Flight #1 or any of that series?
I just remembered enjoying it. I knew that they had a mix of new characters and classic characters in that Alpha Flight series. You know, Guardian, I think is the name of the leader, and then Sasquatch and Puck were in there, and they had some new characters as well. I just liked that book. I followed it for probably 10 or 12 issues before I think I kind of fell off. Same thing with Heroes for Hire. I was picking this up, at least for the early issues around this time, and also didn't stick with it through the end of the run, but I enjoyed what I read of it back then. When I was doing the poll, this is one I've always had in my back pocket that I thought would be a good poll. This was an era after Onslaught when the Heroes Reborn stuff was going on, and Marvel took the opportunity. From a creative standpoint, it makes sense. There's a big hole to fill with the Avengers and Fantastic Four and all those characters being gone. Obviously, they had the Thunderbolts, and then they also had Heroes for Hire and Alpha Flight that they could bring in. And I guess even publishing-wise, those, you know, I guess technically Marvel was publishing those books, but the way I understand it, everything was being handled, you know, by Liefeld and Lee in their studios on the Heroes Reborn stuff. So,
Oh, yeah.
plenty of work to be had for these other Marvel creatives to giving them other stuff to do with these books. But yeah, Thunderbolt's the clear winner as far as those three team books that were launching in the wake of Onslaught. But these two I also enjoyed and thought they would be a good matchup for to see what people preferred.
I was just looking at the creative team on Alpha Flight #1, Stephen T. Siegel. I recognize that name. And Scott Clark, I definitely recognize that name. I saw him on Stormwatch, the early issues of Stormwatch.
I believe Siegel also got his start, at least did some work in the Wildstorm stuff in the mid-90s.
I think you're right, because I'm pretty sure, I want to say it's Grifter one-shot.
Some Vertigo stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, he definitely did. Sandman Mystery Theater. I knew I recognized this name. Sandman Mystery Theater and Hawkman, Primal Force. He was on Grendel #40 from Comico or Comico, however you want to say that. And yes, he was the writer on Grifter One Shot. I knew I recognized that name. And he goes on to do the ongoing Grifter series as well. He writes all 10 of those issues, or at least, 10 of those issues. He liked Grifter. He kind of stuck around there. He did Grifter in the Mask. So he wrote that. Evan, Alpha Flight. Did you have any comments about Alpha Flight and in that series or the first issue?
Yeah, I got that one from the start. Thought I got every issue, but then when I was cataloging comics a couple years ago, I realized I had missed number 10.
Bummer.
Tracked it down at a local shop, though. I've always had an affinity for Alpha Flight, so yeah, I followed that one start to finish. It had kind of like an X-Files vibe almost, that, you know, these guys were working for the government, but the government was messing with them. Not everybody on the team is who they said they were or who they thought they were.
Uh-oh.
And and I did get, I think I've mentioned it on here before, my high school graduation present. My mom took my best friend and me to Chicago Comic-Con in 1998. And that Siegel and Joe Kelly were writing X-Men at that point, and I got this issue signed by Steve Siegel. It's a pretty dark cover except for the white on Guardian's costume, and so Siegel signed it in red on Guardian's crotch. Really the only, it was really the only viable place to sign it, but that always stuck in my head too. I thought it was pretty cool. It had a whole bunch of new characters in it, and really an interesting twist later once they figured out some of the conspiracies. They had this government bureaucrat who was put in charge of Department H. He's actually a really nice dude, like the perfect boss, and you kept waiting for it to be revealed that he was a Skrull or something. No, he was just a good dude.
All right.
A great closing line, too, without spoiling anything. By the end of the series, the roster had gotten pretty big, and Flex, one of the new characters who was kind of a reluctant hero, he goes to the boss and he's like, well, Mr. Gentry, what are we going to do? Don't we have too many people on this team? And Gentry says, well, Flex, that might be a problem if, say, someone was writing stories about us and people were reading about our adventures. But since that's not happening, we're fine with a big roster.
A little bit of meta.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. That's funny. Well,
needless to say, I voted for Alpha Flight. I did. Do you want me to go into my Heroes for Hire experience, or?
Yeah, go for it.
I remember that coming out, and I was intrigued, if for no other reason than the Hulk was on the cover. I hadn't known a lot about Power Man and Iron Fist. I just knew they existed. I didn't realize then how magnificent their original series was. If I had, I would have been all over this from the start. I got it. I started reading it somewhere around issue 10. And it was a budget casualty, but I remember the moment that made me quit was She-Hulk was guest starring. She did legal work for them. And she made some comment where she looked directly at the reader and broke the fourth wall. And I'm like, look, that's funny in She-Hulk's book, but we don't need this happening in other books. I don't know why that bothered me, but it did. And I was like, okay, well, I know which book I'm dropping. In all sense.
You know, it kind of fits in with the tone of the book in a way because, like, it's not so much present in this issue. I've been reading these Heroes for Hire issues for a month or so on Marvel Unlimited, pretty much since I knew it was going to be on the show. And not so much in this issue, but in the future issues, the narrator would often crack jokes and talk directly to the reader in kind of a jokey manner, in a way that I didn't really like that much, or I don't really like that much. But you know, it doesn't bleed over into the actual story until I guess the She-Hulk thing, which I don't think I've got to that point yet.
Now, the real influence this had was it spawned one of my favorite Overpower cards.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys remember the Marvel card game Overpower, but some friends of mine and I in high school were very much into that. And the Heroes for Hire card was flipping awesome. 8 strength, 7 fighting, awesome special cards. And the Hulk space took up 2/3 of the Heroes for Hire character card.
Oh, wow. That's funny. I was just kind of looking through the rest of the series here. John Ostrander is credited as the writer throughout this whole thing. All 19 issues.
Although he was not the guy originally hired to do it. I don't know if he pitched it or if he was asked to pitch it, but the original assignment for this went to and no disrespect at all to John Ostrander, excellent comic writer, but went to the one and only Roger Stern.
Ah, yes.
Who is an awesome writer and an awesome guest at comic conventions. He was a regular at Mid-OhioCon in Columbus when I used to go up there, and just a heck of a nice guy. I even got to interview him once for a Story for Free comic book day.
Oh, nice.
So, that was pretty cool. But yeah, Roger Stern was the one with the original assignment. He developed the series and then plotted out the issue, but I guess hadn't done the script, and it said he had too many pressing commitments for the coming year, and Heroes for Hire was the one that had to go. But they brought in John Ostrander, who they said was great with juggling lots of characters in a mission-oriented setting from his days writing DC's fondly remembered Suicide Squad.
Right.
Yeah, he wrote the original issues of that. And if you can't have Roger Stern, John Ostrander's not a bad consolation.
No, not at all. I mean, Roger Stern, my goodness, the legacy that he has writing comics. If you pick up an Avengers issue from the 80s, it's a possibility that you're going to be reading some Roger Stern stuff. Very good possibility. He was always center square at Mid-OhioCon's Comic Book Squares panel. Nice. But yeah, you can't beat that. So Roger Stern on the plot, John Ostrander on the script, Pasquale Ferry penciling. And I should just real quick do a lookup for that to find out if he's done anything else.
He has a long career. I don't know what he had done before this, if anything, but and I really like his art in this series. Around the mid-2000s, he took over Ultimate Fantastic Four for a while, and I noticed in that run that his art, he was definitely doing a lot of computer elements with his art. I don't know if he had started drawing digitally. I don't know if that was even possible at that point in time, but it definitely had a lot of computer effects and digital coloring, and I didn't like that art style as much. And his more recent stuff, like he did that Namor mini-series from last year, and I think now he's doing Doctor Strange. It's kind of reminds me of the difference between the 90s art of, now I'm struggling to remember the guy's name, he does a lot of Star Wars stuff. Salvador LaRocca. That's
there it is.
Where I really liked his pencil art, in the 90s, early 2000s, but now it's all super digital looking, and I don't like it very much. And that's kind of how Pasquale Ferry's seems to be to me, his more modern stuff. And I'm sure it's easier. I'm not saying he should, be trying to suit my preferences, but
right.
But I like this era of his art a lot, and not as much now. But
yeah, he is 63 years old. Mike's Amazing World of Comics has him starting though in 93 with Plasma.
Yeah.
So but that's the earliest thing they have him on, unless he was going under a different name or something like that. But he did all 4 issues of Plasma, and I mean, really, Heroes for Hire happens in 97, so about 4 years after that. So, yeah, I mean, looks like he's a Marvel guy for quite a while. Skips over to DC there at about in the 2000s, and then comes back to Marvel, just like you said, doing the Ultimate Fantastic Four. So, I mean, he does a good job. And then we have Jamie Mendoza on the inks, Jonathan Babcock on the letters, Joe Rosas on colors, and there you go. I know I see Joe Rosas' name a lot when it comes to colors in the 90s. Heroes for Hire, number 1. I'm going to throw something to you here, Chris. Set up. You already said there's a big event that happened. Why don't you kind of tell everybody and let them know what this big event that occurred, and kind of give them an idea of what Onslaught meant to the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, well, Onslaught was one of the biggest 90s, comic crossover events for Marvel, kind of born out of the X-Men franchise. Onslaught was this big villain that kind of rose up in the Avengers, Fantastic Four, pretty much all the Marvel Universe, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, everybody was kind of teamed up to deal with this big threat that Onslaught presented. And it sort of ended with a lot of the main superheroes that were not mutants kind of sacrificing themselves seemingly to defeat Onslaught. The reason the mutants didn't do it is because if they tried to sacrifice themselves in the same way the human characters did, it would have only made Onslaught more powerful because he was a mutant as well.
See, I thought it was because the X-Men books were selling better. But
yeah, that was the creative reason given. But so a lot of these superheroes disappeared after this big cataclysmic fight in New York City, where most of Marvel's characters are based anyway. And it left a big void for superhero protection for the citizens who were probably terrified that they just lived through this almost cosmic level battle in their backyard. The people who saved them from it all died in the wake of it. And the mutants were kind of blamed for everything afterwards too. So nobody wanted to trust the X-Men to save them. That's sort of where this kind of sprung from, this Heroes for Hire series.
Right. And if you get a chance, go back into the source material archives. Should be able to find me, Evan, Chris, and Mark Radulich discussing the whole 4 volumes of the Onslaught epic from September of 2019. Episodes 239, 241, 242, and 243. We read them.
Put in
for
some
you
work
folks.
there.
Yeah, we did. Massive storyline. So you can kind of check that out and then come on back and check this out while you're at it afterwards. All right. Let me pull up the synopsis here for Heroes for Hire, number 1. At the high-tech prison known as the Vault, a routine prisoner drop-off escalates into a full-scale prison break, orchestrated by a group of villains under the command of a mysterious figure who believes their actions will save the world. Or at least, the mysterious figure definitely believes that. Meanwhile, Danny Rand, a.k.a. Iron Fist, learns of the prison break during a training session and shares his concerns with Jim Hammond, the original Human Torch. Danny is particularly troubled as the security system at the vault, which failed, was his design, or at least part of his design, and he's worried about society's reaction also following the Onslaught event that led to many heroes disappearing. You want the people to feel safe, and Danny obviously feels responsible here. In the desert, look like the desert, the Hulk is ambushed and knocked unconscious by the UFOs made up by Vapor, Ironclad, Vector, and X-Ray. Vector places a small disc on the Hulk, claiming him now as their property. In New York, Luke Cage is enjoying a movie on Broadway when Iron Fist approaches him, seeking his help to reassemble the Heroes for Hire team. Cage declines, leaving Iron Fist worried that his plan actually may fail without Cage's involvement. At a United Nations symposium, the UFOs appear with the Hulk, following their orders to disrupt the event. Across town, Hercules gets into a bar fight, but is drawn to the UN building upon seeing a news report about the Hulk's involvement. Iron Fist also heads to the UN and finds White Tiger in the utility room. Not the White Tiger he used to know. She has followed him, seeking his help to end the hostage situation. As they reach the end of an air shaft, they see the UFOs have attached discs to all the scientists there. Before White Tiger and Iron Fist can act, Hercules bursts in, engaging in a fight with Vapor. White Tiger and Iron Fist join the battle, with Iron Fist confronting the Hulk and destroying the control disc on his neck. Enraged, the Hulk disperses Vapor with a thunderclap and aids Hercules in defeating Ironclad. Vector orders a retreat, claiming they have acquired the data that they needed, and it's time to get out of there. The heroes attend to the scientists as the media arrive, reporting that the UFO's involvement here are the same villains that apparently were involved in the Vault prison break, and revealing that the controlling discs seem to be that were made by the Controller, a very prominent Marvel villain. In an interview, Iron Fist announces that the Heroes for Hire are back, offering their services to those who can pay for a nominal fee. Despite Iron Fist's invitation,
it goes to charity.
It does go to charity. It does go to charity. Despite Iron Fist's invitation, though, the Hulk declines to join the group, leaving White Tiger, Iron Fist, and Hercules right now as the core members. Elsewhere, it is revealed that the UFOs are actually working for somebody called the Master of the World. That's an interesting villain name, who plans to manipulate Rand and the Heroes for Hire. And that is how we end issue 1. Evan, real quick, the Hulk is here, but he's also in the Heroes Reborn universe, right?
That is correct. I had forgotten that was the version of the Hulk we got, because in the climax of the battle with Onslaught, the Hulk punched Onslaught so hard that he was separated from Bruce Banner. And
right.
The Hulk was unconscious, and Bruce kind of wandered into the big energy stew where all the other heroes were supposedly dying. So, yeah, the Hulk was leaping around without any Bruce Banner to tell him to calm down.
Yeah, there's a lot of mention about how the Hulk seems to be less predictable. He's not as predictable as he used to be. Less controlled, I guess is the best way to put it. It seems to be a little bit more violent, and he absolutely seems to have his wits about him. This is not Hulk smash. He's able to form complete sentences, which is kind of what I thought was different. I wasn't expecting him to be as cognizant as he is, because he's like, now you guys are going to pay for what you did to me. And
I think at this point, pre-Onslaught, he was the kind of the professor incarnation of the Hulk, which at that point was billed as the body of the Savage Hulk, the mind of Banner, and the emotions and attitude of the Gray Hulk.
Okay.
So, but now there's no Banner in the equation.
Got it. All right. Vapor. Not to be confused with Vapora, who was a villain from my from the Daredevil Don't Be Huffing Gasoline comic book that I read. Not the same, although she looks pretty similar.
Probably distant cousins.
Distant cousins, I'll agree. But
there was probably in Power Pack or something like a Vapor War crossover.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Vapor Wars parts 1 through 6. I remember.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first issue of Heroes for Hire. I am, I'm perfectly pleased with what I got here. It's very similar to X-Men 2099, where, hey, come join the team. Nah, I'm good. Luke Cage, of all people, was like, nah, I've done this before. I'm not interested. But when you look at the cover, Evan, what do we have on the cover?
Yeah, not unlike some characters in another recent episode, X-Men 2099, people in this one did not pay attention to the cover. Right. On the cover, we see not only Luke Cage standing with his old pal Iron Fist, but the Hulk, clearly billed as a member. Whoever was designing the HeroClix card certainly thought he was going to be along for the ride. And the Black Knight, who is definitely teased as showing up next issue.
Right. Yeah. White Tiger, this is a different version of White Tiger, so I assume, unless you guys know different, this is her first appearance, right?
This is the only place I ever remember her appearing.
Okay. All right. I mean, she's got a better look than the White Tiger that I'm used to seeing in Marvel Snap. She's got that ninja kind of look to her, full bodysuit with some crazy looking claws. Danny doesn't trust her. Go ahead.
Oh, do you want to know where she came from?
I do.
She was a creation of the High Evolutionary.
Really?
Yeah, and she was actually an evolved tiger.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that comes up in one of maybe the second or third issue or one of the earlier issues. Yeah, she kind of loses control and starts to transform into a tiger.
So at first you're like, wow, her speech you're trailing behind the Hulk. Then when you consider that she was actually a large cat, it's pretty impressive vocabulary.
Starts to make a little sense. As her first appearance.
There wasn't a white tiger at this point. That's a character that Marvel, or a title that Marvel revisits every few years.
So this is her first appearance here?
She first appeared, yes, Heroes for Hire #1, May 1997. There was a time when new characters were introduced, in first issues or in other titles instead of in one-shots. to set up the next year's worth of stories.
Right. I mean, I'm trying to think of what else really kind of stands out to me here. There's mention of Onslaught quite a few times, because they're obviously, that's the whole kind of goal of this team, is to be out there. Danny obviously feels like, hey, I want the public to feel safe. And that's why he's in front of the media saying, hey, we're out here. We can protect you for a nominal fee, charity donation. And, seeing, let me ask you this, Chris, were the UFOs the ones that did the prison break at the vault?
You mean in this issue?
Yeah, because I'm looking at this issue, and I mean, it says it at the end. Or
They were in disguise.
The media. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's what confused me. I was like, that is not those guys. What is going on? Okay. So there you go. Makes sense to me now. So they definitely were the people at the vault. Mystery solved. Okay. All right. Well, Chris, I'm going to go ahead and let you go here. What are your thoughts here?
This is a pretty lengthy one, 41 pages listed here on the Marvel app anyway. It's a lot of stuff going on. I do like Perry's art in this, and something that's even more obvious if you're reading it on an iPad with the smart panels or whatever, is that early, or I should say the late 90s digital effects that they were using in a lot of comics
right
around this time is really obvious. And sometimes it looks goofy and dated. Sometimes it actually does work and looks cool. But there's something about it that is almost nostalgic at this point because they've advanced so far past a lot of this. It's kind of like seeing shaky CGI in some, early movies that it doesn't look great. It's not perfect, but there's still like a charm to it almost. But yeah, there's a lot of the computer effects in this stuff. This was kind of the first book that I ever really read with Iron Fist as far as him being a regular character. I'm sure I had read stuff where he guest starred, and in the past before this point, but same thing with Luke Cage. I did have a couple of issues of Cage, the 90s solo book he had, but I didn't keep up with it, so it was kind of cool. I had known through trading cards and maybe Wizard Magazine or whatever that Power Man and Iron Fist were a tandem that were a big deal in the 70s and maybe into the 80s, but now I got to see them together, which is cool. I always kind of get a kick out of the UFOs showing up, mostly because they were in one of my favorite Darkhawk comics. I think it was Darkhawk #6, where Captain America and Daredevil and Darkhawk teamed up to take on the UFOs. I think they were mostly Hulk villains, right? Is that right, Evan?
Yeah, I got the feeling they were kind of like, if you needed someone a little more threatening than the Wrecking Crew, you brought in the UFOs.
Yeah, that seems right.
They were like the utility players of Marvel villains.
Yeah.
It's like, we need somebody who's a bit more threatening than the Wrecking Crew. How about the UFOs? Yeah, they haven't appeared in 3 issues.
I like the updated Hercules and Luke Cage costumes for this series. Like on the cover, Cage has got his yellow shirt, but in later issues, he has, I think it's like a white or maybe even a silver shirt. And he still has the tiara, the silver band around his head, but a little bit of an updated night. And this is an attempt, I guess, to modernize Hercules' look. I don't really like his traditional look with the green bands. I think most people who like Hercules, they want that classic Hercules look. Right. I don't really like the early 90s Avengers, Hercules costume either, but I think this is an attempt to kind of update his look and be a little less cringy, I guess, from some of his older costumes. I like this Hercules look. Of course, 80% of his appearances at this point are just him in the standard green costume that he has. The only other thing I really had specifically, I'm kind of scrolling through to see if I can find it in this issue. It's when Hercules is in a confrontation with this guy who he's trying to steal this guy's girl, I guess. And that looks an awful lot like a puffy shirt. I think that's the puffy shirt from Seinfeld.
And
always one of
and pointy ears.
Yeah, he does seem to have those. Maybe he's an elf, and maybe that's why Hercules has got his radars attuned to him.
I was getting some North Star vibes, but they wouldn't have been fighting over a woman.
Yeah, that's true. No.
It's funny that guy
platform shoes too.
Oh yeah.
What's that dude's story?
Straight out of the 70s, he's been at this bar since the 70s, trying to find somebody. And that guy behind him too, the big bulky guy. He thinks he's. I mean, I assume that he thinks he's got a shot at this girl too. This is classic Hercules right here. This is the way you introduce this character. He's going to get into a bar fight because he's macking on some woman. He's drinking a lot. And I mean, my goodness, if you weren't going to say this, a generous soul, he wishes to share with me the gift of battle. And I was like, I've heard that before. The gift of battle. That's a great line.
Now, I'm curious about the dude behind him because he's got that massive belt buckle and is not as fancily dressed. They don't look like guys who would hang out together. I kind of want to know their backstory now.
What in the world is he picking up and hitting him with? Like, is it a drink tray?
Look kind of like, who knows? Maybe it's just a table.
Okay.
Like a little glass table. Who knows?
There's drinks flying from it, and it looks like, and of course, it's made of glass. But anyway, yeah, I love how he just takes both of them and yoinks them out the window, which, by the way, I thought was a little bit higher. When you look at that window, I'm like, holy crap, he threw him out of the skyscraper. No,
and then the manager says, it was the third time this week you've thrown someone through a window here.
Would not let Hercules back in. I mean, fool me once. Yeah. I think this is a great way to introduce Hercules. Go ahead, Chris. I interrupted you.
We have the Guardians who, obviously they're guarding the ball, but it seems like a lot of times the writers, they're using the Guardians to make the villains look threatening, and then it's the UFOs who are used to make the heroes look powerful because they can beat them, even though, so it's kind of the standard, characters you throw in there to make somebody look good or whatever, and then you kind of build up from there. But
right.
Also like Jim Hammond, who is the original Human Torch. This is probably the first exposure I had to him as a character, although I did know about the Human Torch the original Human Torch being an android and stuff from probably trading cards again or something like that. But he is a key character in this series. And
oh, really?
That was cool to have him, a big part of Marvel history, as part of the cast here. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I got. I liked this issue. This is a cool series, I think.
The fact that Vapor is able to take down the Hulk, that's pretty impressive. But I'm sitting here thinking, like, the other person that fought the Hulk that beat him by using gas was Batman. I remember.
Oh, yeah.
I think Hulk either had him in a bear hug or something like that, and he ended up. I could clearly see Batman used some type of a gas. It got into his lungs, and it was Batman versus the Hulk. I'm pretty sure it was that crossover, and he ended up knocking the Hulk out with whatever gas they used. So that's how you beat the Hulk, I guess. I'm trying to think of when I did Hulk thing Hard Knocks. That was forever ago. That was like my second episode ever for source material, if I remember right. But I think they used gas in that one too to take him out. So, he's not all invulnerable on the inside.
That's right.
The inside. All right, Evan.
You can also diffuse a situation involving the Hulk with a box of puppies.
Oh, really?
No, that happened.
That happened. Squirrel Girl?
No, Indestructible Hulk by Mark Waid.
As soon as I saw a box of puppies, I mean, everything stops right there. I'm playing with some puppy dogs. All right, Evan, you're up, man. What'd you think of the issue?
Oh, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It reminded me of what attracted me to this series to begin with, which was, me, I like the C-list characters or the odd assortments. I mean, what kid reading comics didn't go, oh, what would be cool is if you put like Sleepwalker and Darkhawk and Gambit and, that Rentro dude that hangs out with Doctor Strange on a team. That's kind of what this reminds me of. It's taking people from all different parts of the Marvel universe and putting them together. I don't know if we mentioned it in the synopsis, but the Heroes for Hire is, basically owned by the Rand Meacham Corporation, which is now a subsidiary of Oracle, which is owned and led by Namor.
Oh, right.
And so I think in the note at the back from the editor, he mentioned that, Iron Fist had been killed off at the end of the original Power Man and Iron Fist series, and John Byrne brought him back in the Namor series that established Oracle and established him as like a corporate powerhouse. And so that's how this came about. And then, of course, Jim Hammond was his ally in the Invaders from World War II. So I assume that's how he got in there. So it's just weaving all these strands of Marvel together. Black Knight, I remember him when I first learned about the Avengers. Black Knight was a key figure there. And then, like Chris, Luke Cage and Iron Fist I had learned about them from trading cards and references in other comics. So this was my first real exposure to them. And yeah, just the idea, I mean, it used to be the idea of the Hulk on a team was just crazy, and now he's just a regular Avenger. He attends the meetings and everything, probably has an ID card. But that used to be pretty unusual. Even despite the Defenders, they were just kind of like, oh yeah, the Hulk's here. Make sure he's not breaking something. So yeah, just that whole idea of bringing together all these disparate characters, really showing the Marvel Universe in an organic way. This obviously sets up the Master of the World, and I think there's a reference to Iron Fist saying like he had made a poor choice, or talking about the impending return of Kunlun,
Yes.
which was supposed to be accessible from our reality in the year 2000. Can you get that sound clip from Conan O'Brien's old show? I remember that was something that actually wasn't resolved when the series ended, and they came out with the Wolverine and Iron Fist limited series. Basically, the return of Kunlun wasn't going to be a good thing, and Iron Fist and Wolverine had to deal with that.
Yeah, I wondered if that was going to be the long game there, because they made sure to mention that.
It was so long that it outlasted the series. But yeah, I remember a friend of mine in college who had read Power Man and Iron Fist. I loaned him these issues, and that was we exchanged Christmas gifts, and I got him the Wolverine Iron Fist series so he could figure out how that played out.
Nice.
But yeah, and then I think eventually Scott Lang, Ant-Man, showed up in this. Always had a soft spot for him. So it's like Ant-Man, but not the original. You know me, I like the guys who came second and third, the U.S. Agent and Thunderstrike and Scott Lang.
Ben Reilly?
I did not so much.
Well,
you just totally derailed me there, Armstrong.
I apologize. I think it's always worth it if it gets a Ben Reilly reference in. So
I think it's annoying when people just try to ravage a podcast by shoehorning in a character. But to each his own. I did appreciate now. I wouldn't have gotten it then, but on page 16, I'm not picking a panel, I'm just saying I like this, where they have the flashback talking about Danny and Luke's partnership, and it's, that a classic Power Man and Iron Fist cover recreated there.
Oh, yeah.
So those, like I said, I'd heard about them. I finally read some in the Essentials, and oh my goodness, those are some of the most fun comics I've ever read.
Yeah, a long time ago, it was a few years back, I just did a one-off reading the first time Iron Fist met Luke Cage. I think it was in promotion of the series. So the Defenders was getting ready to drop on Netflix. And I will tell you that was a really cool way of introducing both of those guys together. I wish I could remember who was on art. Help me out. Do you remember, Evan?
Was Claremont writing it then? Because Claremont and Byrne did a lot with Iron Fist.
I just know the panels were just etched in my mind, because all you see, like Luke Cage went into this, this apartment building or something, and he's acting pretty aggressive like he does. And the only thing you see, like, he looks in a room and it's just black, and then all of a sudden Iron Fist's fists start glowing. That's like the next panel. And then he walks forward, and then he just punches Luke through a wall, and it's great. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be good.
Yeah, issue 50, where the Power Man series. Yes, it was a good issue. Revered across species lines. But yeah, Power Man and Iron Fist number 50, where Iron Fist joined the title, was written by Chris Claremont, drawn by John Byrne.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, it was captivating, and I don't journey into the 70s very often. This is the late 70s, if I remember correctly, right? Like 70, 76, 77, something like that. But man, it had me hooked. They were doing a great job.
Oh yeah, and there was one. I would be remiss if I didn't mention my favorite issue. Just one of those comics. I'm glad that it exists. I think it was Power Man and Iron. Yeah. Yes, Power Man and Iron Fist number 85, where the heroes for hire are hired to go undercover as long-haul truckers because the Mole Man has been pulling tractor trailers underground in the Midwest.
Oh, wow.
Written by Dennis O'Neil.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And Luke's, you don't get much of it here, but Luke's got a secret in this series too.
Okay.
So you got the heart and soul of the heroes for hire, these long-standing friends, and they both have stuff they're hiding from each other.
Oh, really?
Yes, indeed.
Well,
Setting up the drama.
I wanted to say that Pasquale can draw a big guy. The Hulk looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm not going to say that it's Art Adams-esque, but it's big enough and expressive enough for the Hulk. When he gets punched in the back of the head by Iron Fist, he's popping that disc off the back of Hulk's head. And, you know, anytime that he's kind of looking at the bad guys, he knows he's going to wreck some stuff here in a few. We can go ahead and get into picking the panels. I did love how, well, you know what? I'm not going to say that because I have a feeling somebody's going to pick it. If somebody doesn't pick it, I'll talk about it here in a few moments. But other than that, I mean, yeah, we're getting our team together. We got some people that we invited. They decided not to do it. And Black Knight hasn't showed up yet. So we'll find out what's going to happen here. So the world needs heroes, folks, for a nominal fee. Let's talk panels. So, Chris, you went last time, so I'm going to give you first shot here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with page 4, or actually, I guess it would maybe be 30. It's the panel with the Iron Fist using his Iron Fist to smash that disc on the back of Hulk's neck, and you can really sense the motion and the power of the punch and everything. Pretty cool. A lot of cool images in this book, I think, but that's probably my favorite.
You think the Hulk's going bald there? Is he going bald?
Yeah.
He's got a bowl cut.
Bald. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, geez, Jesse, you get punched in the back of the head by Iron Fist and see how your hair looks.
I think I have been, apparently, the way my hair's growing. Evan, I'll let you go next here, man. What do you got?
Mine is actually the page after Chris's, where Hulk disperses vapor with a classic Hulk clap.
Yep.
The thunderclap.
And then you got Iron Fist and White Tiger just trying not to get blown away. The one after that, where Ironclad realizes the Hulk's not on their side anymore, is pretty good too.
If I compared this art to Joe Mad, am I far off?
I can see it.
Okay.
I feel maybe quite as, I don't know if clean's the right word. I don't know. I just, it doesn't feel quite as clean as Joe Mad's, but I mean, I can definitely see the resemblance.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you guys didn't pick the one that I was going to talk about, and I'm going to pick it. That is the history that Hercules is regaling all of these beautiful ladies with about how he was a member of the Avengers, and we get a very classic looking Hercules in this one-page splash along with the rest of the Avengers. You know, Silver Surfer's there, Photon, Captain Marvel. Who is she at that point?
She
was known as both in that costume, I think. So
all right, so and Black Knight's there, Human Torch. I think Reed and
Silver. Black Knight is in this issue. I just realized.
Oh yeah, he's in the splash page. He's in cameo. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, and it looks like he changed his art style up for this page a little bit. In my opinion, it looks like it's a little bit more structured and a little less anime. Probably the best way to put it. It looks great, and it's fun to watch. You know, let me tell you, ladies, about the time I spent with these great heroes who are now gone. I mean, all of these are gone, right? Like all of these heroes are gone. Silver Surfer, though.
Silver Surfer and Namor are still around.
Okay. All right.
There's Hercules.
Oh, yep. He shows up at some point, I think. Big H on his belt, just in case you didn't know.
I have no idea if this is intentional, but I mean, Hercules is a good guy. I especially like his appearance in the early Avengers run from some of the essentials. That's where I really got to like Hercules. So he is a good dude, but he does have a bit of an ego. So, of course, he's in here twice.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that was a conscious decision, but it totally makes sense that in this classic assemblage of heroes, Hercules is in there twice.
You got a good point there. All right. Well, I think we did it here. Any other last thoughts on Heroes for Hire? We get into plugs. All right. Well, yeah, this has been our coverage of Heroes for Hire. Let's go ahead. We'll talk about what we have been into here recently. And Evan Bevins, I'm going to shoot it to you first here this time. What do you got going on over there on Asterisk 51 and any other shows that you've been popping up on?
Well, at asterisk51.blogspot.com, if you like 90s comics, I'm working my way through the Amalgam Marvel and DC crossover mashup issues right now. I also did the complete 25-issue run of Secret Defenders. You can find there, and there was a time that Captain America turned into a werewolf. As far as Heroes for Hire go, I haven't delved as much into that as I would like, but back when the Moon Knight series came out, I did take a look at one of the most memorable adventures of Moon Knight that I could recall, which was in an issue of Power Man and Iron Fist when he got stuck in a water tower.
Oh, man.
True story. Jesse and I also have been known to talk once a month about the mobile game Marvel Snap.
That's right.
And we'll have some new issues of Snap material dropping soon. I don't just read comics. I also watch movies based on comics. Mark Radulich and I, not too long ago, discussed Bulletproof Monk, the comic that shares a name and not much else with a 2003 movie starring Chow Yun-fat and Seann William Scott.
Wow.
That was on an episode of Comic Stripped on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network.
Yeah, good stuff right there. So, okay, Chris Armstrong, what do you got going on over there at Small Screeners? Took me a second. I got there.
I've got a podcast I do with my buddy AJ where we talk about direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. So some recent episodes include Stephen King's The Night Flyer, John Carpenter's Elvis, TV movie he made in the 70s, late 70s or early 80s with Kurt Russell, and also Steven Spielberg's first movie, the 1971 made-for-TV movie Duel, about a guy in an intense situation with a semi-truck driver on the desert highway.
Oh, man. Scary stuff. I already knew. I mean, you said what the list was going to be, which was top Kurt Russell characters. And there was no doubt in my mind what your number one was going to be. Not a single doubt. I honestly thought, well, he might shoot for The Thing, but I think I know what he's going to go for. I was correct. It was, yes, it was Ego.
Some of the reflexes.
The old Pork Chop Express. Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm catching them all over there on the small screeners. All right, now I better get through my plugs. See if I can remember the shows that I do. Yeah, right here. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably listening to the source material feed, which is granted to us by w2mnet.com. So please feel free to check out the other podcasts that they have over there. They have a lot of great podcasts. Radulich guys are obviously a part of that. They have a video game podcast that they do. It's Video Games to the Max. As for me, you got the Unspoken Issues right here. We talk 90s comics. It's me, Derry, Dean, Evan, Chris. Sometimes Matthew Price says, you know what? I'm done selling comics for the day. I want to talk about comics. He comes on and he does it. So you can listen to that. We're talking 90s comics all the time. And then you can check out the Source Material Comics podcast where we talk about any era of comics. And recently we are in our third part of our coverage of Greg Rucka's Lois Lane comic book, which is Enemy of the People. Return of the Gag Reel. Mark Radulich should be happy. I'm glad that he gets to hear that. And as far as other appearances go, I will be on the MCU's Bleeding Edge, and I'll be talking Star Wars, the Acolyte.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Star Wars, The Age of Apocalypse. Check it out. It's crazy. I don't know much about Star Wars, but Jeff seems to think that I contribute a little bit to their show. So he's like, man, we're doing the Acolyte. I'm like, okay, put me down for episode 2. I'll watch 2 episodes and then I'll come on there and talk about it. So already I've heard some bad things, especially apparently there was a fire in space, but not uncommon for Star Wars films. Just letting you know. Just letting you know.
Did you volunteer for that because you thought it was about Magneto's group?
I did. I was expecting there to be Exodus involved. Was not. Turns out I was mistaken.
Happened to the best of us.
But anyway, yeah, feel free. Check out the MCU's Bleeding Edge. And what was the other thing I wanted to promote here? Go check out the YouTube. That's what I want to talk about. You know, Evan and I have been streaming some Marvel Snap. So feel free to check out source material, the YouTube. And you can also find old episodes of Unspoken Issues on there too, I think. I have a playlist. All right, we're out of here. That's Evan Bevins. That's Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without w2mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.